Indian Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to share a few thoughts with you. We are actually meeting at a time when in the third term of the Prime Minister, I emphasize on the third term only because it reflects a desire of the people of India for continuity and stability in policy. We need to have, at a time or at the juncture in which India is located in, stability in policy, a predictable tax regime, and also continuity in administration, so that businesses can be sure that there will be some steady pathway with which they can go ahead with their plans. More so because globally, for various different reasons, you're seeing not so stable a world. And if instability is the feature all across the globe, either because of war or because of the closed economies which are still ruling the roost in some parts of the world, or because how global commons have become now subject to a lot of what may be called high sea piracy or attacks on cargo vessels, and the essentials which keep moving from one part of the world to the other are now avoiding conflict zones and having to take a roundabout route to their destination. All of this is adding to the costs of everything that you want to buy and sell, import and export. As a result, all over the globe, every government is feeling that it is only that much and not beyond that can they control factors of production. And when they can't beyond a point control or regulate or seemingly bring in some kind of a market sense, no one is really on the top of inflation management. No one is really on the top of regulating and leaving the market forces to determine how our economy should move. As a result, there is stress in policy making all over the world. Over and above that, this particular year, there are more than 50 countries, all of which are going for elections at different parts of the year, different times in the year. So if 50 countries are going for elections, and in many of them there seems to be a regime change possibility, India, which also went through an election process this year, fortunately could make the electing public understand the importance of continuity in regime. Understand why a country like India, with various different problems of development, of regional inequalities, of demographic dividend in some regions and demographic challenge in some others, resource constraints, but yet also having an aspirational population which wants to come out of the rut in which we have spent some decades in the past. So India, despite also going into election mode this year, could reason out to the Indian public the need for a stable, continuing government and the risks of alliance-driven government. And India has seen it all before. What an alliance-driven government can do to our economy. I don't even want to underline the fact that sometimes you need to go back to thinking. The unstable governments, the instability that they brought in, led to India having to pledge the sovereign gold that it had and get some money. And is that wrong? It's not. But there is an emotion and a sentiment in this country saying you wouldn't do that unless you're so desperate. And equally, after that and before that, because of this kind of an alliance regime, you've also had instability governing every policy making attempt by the government, and no government could function with coherence. You had partners doing things which even as they say in Hindi, the mukhya could not hold the partners together. The chief of this group could not even hold the partners together to the same principle of governance, to be transparent, to be effective in governance, and to make a difference to the public. So that lessons learned, thankfully, Indian voters did not forget, and they voted for a stable government, albeit with some reduction in the majority. So, the point that I would want to place before you is India is at a cusp of moving towards and taking that trajectory which will lead us to a developed economy by 2047. And if in this trajectory you have obstructions, you're not going to be able to make it even in the next 30 years. So what if you don't make it? Look at what you're doing at the moment. You are the fastest growing country. You contribute, as per IMF's own assessment, close to 16% of the global GDP. And if that is the contribution you're making to the global GDP at a time when even advanced economies are struggling, I know they start from a higher base, but even when advanced economies are not able to showcase more than 1% growth, 2% growth in their GDP, here is India touching 7%, and even a few days ago, the World Bank reiterated that in coming year too, India shall grow at that level, 7%. And that is purely because stable policy making, steady and visionary leadership, together with the efforts of all the entrepreneurs in this country, efforts of small and medium industries, big industries which are generating jobs, which are also making sure in some sunrise sectors, India has the lead advantage. And because of that kind of an effort and the policy of the government to give production-linked incentive to those 13, 14 sectors, sunrise sectors, you feel that there is a rapid growth in those sectors, whether it is advanced chemistry, green energy, green ammonia, hydrogen, renewable energy, where we have already proven to the world that in solar we are leaders. No wonder the Prime Minister started off the International Solar Alliance. There are talks of grids coming in the Southeast Asia of the world, Southeast Asian countries. And with those grids, and also from India, if renewable energy can dovetail with them, you're going to have a globally well established, at least one major part of the globe will have an established grid system through which power can be bought and sold. And that is where, talking to South India Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I feel there is so much of potential lying here. When I say here, I mean in the South Indian states. That is not, I want to underline this fact, that whenever we talk about South India, there's this sense of, oh, we are better off than the rest of the Indians. I'm sorry, we are part of India. We need to prove repeatedly, yes, we have challenges. Yes, we have strengths. But each part of India fuels the other equally. And in today's terms, let's not forget, you have a severe manpower shortage. And unless there is liberal flow of manpower from all parts of the country, even that exceptional entrepreneurship that we display in South India will be struggling. So I want to first of all start with this premise that South India and its strengths will have to benefit India as always, without that toxic narrative which is nowadays becoming a cult. I do not want to be a part of that cult. In the sense, no one of us should be part of that cult. India is one and all of us are working towards building better country, better families, better state, better everybody. So let's go on that note, and when I talk therefore South India, I see opportunity for all of us. Particularly when Sri Lanka is making an effort to integrate its economy with India. We are the first port of call. We are the first port of call, and there's immense potential for India's own production of energy to be able to be marketed in Sri Lanka, and gradually as Sri Lanka is also building its renewable energy, wind energy, solar, they're doing it onshore, offshore. There's so much happening out there in terms of policy making. Yes, they're also going through an election. We'll have to wait for that as well. But many of you all have businesses even there. And you're doing well. We need to have that sense of integrating our economy with the immediate neighborhood for the benefit of both. For the benefit of both the economies, and actually in optimizing the resources which are available in both our areas. The defense corridor was an immense opportunity, and we did realize it in Tamil Nadu. But now there are also extensions, and that extension to Palakkad, and that extension going to Tumkuru in Karnataka, because of the corridors which are being built, is going to have greater integration of the south. And that corridor which comes from Hyderabad going to Bengaluru is going to have a big impact on the economy of Karnataka, particularly the Kalyana Karnataka stretch, the north and the eastern side of Karnataka. So the projects which are big ticket projects of connectivity, which Government of India is investing in, freight corridors, better rail corridors, particular commodity corridors. For cement, the railways are now actually extending for cement, for coal, for many other ores. There are corridors coming, rail freight corridors. It's going to cut down on transport costs. It's going to move commodities faster. You're going to be able to move from one port of call to the other end of the country in the hinterland. So the investments which are being made, similarly, I'm sorry I forgot, similarly Chennai to Bengaluru, nodes are now getting a lot of high priority investments, Uravakal node and also Kopparthi node in Andhra Pradesh, but for the corridor which runs from Chennai to Bangalore, passing through some of North Tamil Nadu border, are all going to give greater mobility for goods and services. The defense corridor, of course, I started by saying defense corridor because that brought in the 6 nodes in Tamil Nadu which had great advantage because of the defense establishments which were already in there, but they got revived. Private investments have come in, and along the corridor, now you have small and medium-sized producers who are producing components for defense industries. And the components of the defense industry, normal grievance would have been in India, oh, all right, we produce world quality. But if our own services don't buy it, when we export it, people ask us, your own armed forces are not buying it, yours is good quality, but what's the point in coming outside? Indian armed forces, once your testing is done of your product and the quality has been established to their satisfaction, today for at least 250 items of defense components, give you a prior understanding and come to an agreement with you for next 10 years that they shall buy from you. Next 10 years, Indian Armed Forces commit itself for those 250 items which are to be produced. Now, normal grievance of the middle sector or the small and medium industries would be, I produce, I even have quality, but there's no guarantee. Now the guarantee is also being extended by our armed forces. So step by step, every linkage, backward and forward, is all being tied up so that industry doesn't have to run from one place to another to get clearance, to buy market or to identify market. The Government e-marketplace, which is the GEM market portal, today gives a slot for the medium-sized industries to put their items which they want government to procure onto that website. So it all gets procured. You're not running from one pillar to one office to another. So government's policy, incentives which are being given, the schemes which have been announced in the budget, wherein there was a part reference made to it, skilling according to the needs of the industry. So when we are talking about internship with top 500 companies in the country, it is funded by the government. Government pays these interns a monthly allowance of 5,000 rupees for a whole year. One-time amount of 6,000 so that the chap goes and adjusts in the place where he is now going to do internship with that money. And after that, every month he gets the government payment for the internship. All that the top 500 company are expected to do is to identify some instructors to handhold them during the internship on the shop floor. So if that is one of the schemes, it is going to ready people for those industry-ready qualities and skill. Most of the time the industry's grievance was, oh yes, we produce a lot of engineers, we produce a lot of graduates, they're not ready for the job. So our recruitment, I spend 6 months to 8 months or even 1 year in training the guy. That's a waste for me. Now government is coming in there and saying, all right, you train them in your place. I give the money for that 1 year. Eventually, if you find him fit, please take him on or else let him go. He'll find it somewhere else. So if that is internship, we also announced that we'll have all over the country the ITIs, which are largely with the state governments, will ready students, skill them for Industry 4.0. You're going in for robotics, you're going for Internet of Things, you're going to manufacture under the principles of Industry 4.0, which means Web 3 is going to take over your manufacturing processes, your packaging processes, your testing processes. Now the ITIs all over the country will be with industry partnership, training youth to become savvy in hand-holding them and making them hands-on experience. So the ITIs and the equipments will be all given by the government, and also the industry will come in to say, this is the kind of training I want from these boys. Okay, girls also. So they would be trained in the ITI and they can come with a diploma. A lot of discussions also going with many countries. For instance, recently I was in Singapore. A ministerial delegation went, and today of course Honorable Prime Minister himself is in Singapore. As a precursor to the Prime Minister's visit, we ministers had gone. One of the things on which we had extensive discussion was skilling and certifying, in which Singapore IT education systems and training, ITEES, is an institution which comes to India in 6 different parts of the country. I can remember readily 2, Bhubaneswar, Guwahati, and possibly Gujarat and possibly Maharashtra. Orissa, yeah, I did say Bhubaneswar. So they are setting up skilling centers and training our youth, certifying them, and also of course helping out for training people to certify in the future. So there are efforts made by Government of India. I took the example of Singapore where I was as a precursor to the Prime Minister's visit. Get global quality training people and trainers to come. Train our own trainers and get these trainings done for our youth so that what is demographic dividend today can be effectively used by industry. So I think there's quite a lot of work which the industry can participate with the government, and industry on its own can extend a bit more in the interest of this economy, our economy. I would quote the famous example of Codicia, which in its own premises, together with their members, trained young people. Although let us say their requirement in a year would be 100, they would train 300 youth in those specific industry required skills. They would absorb only 100, but the other 200 with similar training were available for industry elsewhere. That was a brilliant partnership between government and industry association. I wish that experiment is repeated elsewhere in the country, because it is purpose-serving. We are not training people without understanding the industry's requirement. When industry itself decides to train, it makes sense. And the government can always partner in these sort of things. There are, of course, several things that one can talk about. I also have to emphasize on how we want to encourage industry to recruit people through the EPFO schemes. We have come up with 3 different announcements, all being funded by the government for the EPFO payment through the employee and the employer's share of the payment as well. So the emphasis is sunrise sectors, energy. Fintech is something on which some of the students received awards, and innovation related activities of startups. I had spoken in Kerala earlier. Kerala has immense potential for fintech and startup related activities, because the youth there are doing their own experiments and coming out with very good solutions. But they don't need to be confined to be Kerala. Startups today are benefiting from youth from different qualities, different skill sets from all over the country. And I would think any South Indian state has already shown lead advantage in setting up fintech related activities. Global capability centers are relocating themselves here purely because you have exhibited strength in those areas. But I would now think it's time for us also to draw upon the youth of the rest of the country, use them for what they can offer, train them for what they can offer for the country, and in the process, industries here can also have a cost advantage, which you probably are now reaching a saturation. Many of the global capability centers already set up in the south are now looking for tier 2, tier 3 cities, because the costs have now reached such levels that they are not able to meet their business formula. So I would think there's potential lying in the hinterland, not necessarily in the South Indian states alone. You can move further up north, Madhya Pradesh or Maharashtra, Orissa, and so on. There's immense potential, and banking sector in India has now come out of the difficult days that it had been put to. So the banks and the credit are all available. It is for our industry now. And I'm moving to a very fragile minefield-like area, so I have to choose my words. But I would want to say it here in a gathering of industry. Post 2019, when the corporate tax was reduced, there was a lot of expectation that Indian industry would come out of their twin balance sheet problem and be in a position to invest and expand their business now that the rate had been brought down. Unfortunately, we were hit by COVID, and genuinely industry had its own difficulties post it to come out of it. But now I think India is at a stage where the newer industries, the newer sectors, employment-linked incentive schemes and production-linked incentive schemes, both given by government, and the sunrise areas, India proving a leader. I'm not for a moment comparing ourselves with China, because Chinese economy is so very closed. Their administration is not as open and democratic as ours is. So there's no, but they have achieved a lot. I'm not denying that either. But it is not right for us to compare ourselves with China. However, we have that much capability and potential in this country. I would think industry should seize this moment. Seize this moment and leap forward for your own industry's advantage so that you can compete globally and also be in a position to contribute to growing India's needs. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am, for your illuminating address. I'm sure every member here would surely seize this opportunity to work together to make India a developed nation by 2047. At this moment, I would like to request Mr. V. N. Shivshankar, the Senior Vice President of the